I am not saying that people have no taste, but I'm also not saying it. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife, and today I am taking you through a list of books that have a kind of a low Goodreads rating, but that I really enjoyed. There's a big span of average ratings on this list, going all the way from a 2.81 right up to a 3.59, because I think about a 3.5 or lower is a pretty average rating. So anything below that I have really enjoyed, I think I'm going against the grain here. This is a topic I've seen done by a couple of friends of mine. I've seen it from Brianna, I have seen it from Brittany, I've seen it from Leandra, and I thought that this was something that would be interesting to put my own spin on as well. First up, the lowest rated book on this list is The Lock-In by Phoebe Luckhurst. This has a 2.81 average rating on Goodreads, but I gave it a 4 star. So I am definitely going against the stream here. This book is about Ellen and Alexa. They've always been best friends ever since they were about 15 or so, and they are currently living a house share together in London. One day, they are locked into their attic with 2 other people, their other housemate Jack and Ben. Ben was Alexa's one-night stand from the night before, but as they are getting to know each other because they are still waiting for someone to come and rescue them, Ellen discovers that she knows Ben a lot better than Alexa maybe even does. I thought that this was such an interesting take on the kind of a locked-in, forced proximity situation, and I thought that this was genuinely such an interesting read. I was on tenterhooks trying to find out how Ellie and Ben had known each other in a previous life, why they had drifted apart from one another, and if these 4 people were ever going to see something that wasn't the 4 walls of the attic again. Another book with a relatively low average rating, to which I once again gave 4 stars, is The Flip Side by James Bailey. This is different than a lot of other books that I've read in that it has a male protagonist in a romance book. It's following Josh, whose life is kind of in the gutter at the moment. He has lost his job, his girlfriend has unceremoniously dumped him, and he is living back in the box room of his parents' house. Josh is questioning any decision that he has made in the last while and decides that he's going to leave everything to fate. Every decision Josh makes from now on is going to be left to a coin flip. And this takes him so many different places that he had never expected. It takes him almost across the entire continent of Europe, and I absolutely loved the adventure of this. Now, reading from a male point of view wasn't something that initially drew me in, because obviously we need to start championing male voices more. But I really enjoyed following Josh and watching the whole consequence of what happened with every coin flip. It was genuinely such an exciting read for me. One that I think suffered a little bit from second book syndrome is Four Aunties and a Wedding by Jessie Kusatanto. This is a follow-up to Dial A for Aunties, which I absolutely adored. And Four Aunties and a Wedding has a 3.45 average rating on Goodreads. I myself gave it a 3.5 star rating, and I think, as I said, that that's just because it was second book syndrome. This is once again following Meddy, who is now preparing for her wedding to Nathan, and her entire bunch of aunties and her mother are getting involved with the festivities and are helping to organise everything. But Meddy has got some help from some outside people, including Stephanie, her photographer. Meddy and Stephanie have been talking about growing up as a Chino-Indonesian person. They have been talking about what it's like to have their families on their backs the entire time and feeling like there's no real breathing space when your family is so close around you. But suddenly Meddy realizes that that's where the similarities end, because Stephanie's family isn't just a big meddling group of people. They're actually the mafia, and they are using Meddy's wedding as a cover-up for a huge drugs bust. I thought that this was a good book, but it just lacked some of the magic of Dial A for Aunties for me. But I do know that there is another book to finish out the series, The Good, the Bad and the Aunties, and that's one that is hopefully going to bring the curve a little bit further back up. I gave The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling a 4 star rating, but as an average rating, it's only at a 3.48. This is kind of like if Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Gilmore Girls, Halloween Town, Hocus Pocus all got together and wrote a book as a group project. It's following Vivian, who is a little bit pissed off with how her most recent relationship ended, and in a mixture of alcohol and witchcraft, puts a curse on her ex-boyfriend using a candle that she grabbed at Bed Bath & Beyond. She's pretty sure that this isn't going to work because it's like a $5 candle. It's not exactly the kind of material that she would usually use in her spells and hexes. But it turns out that it worked a little bit better than she was expecting, because 9 years later, Reese is back in town and his life has been a shitstorm right from the second that Vivi put that spell on him. I absolutely loved the antics of this book, and it really did feel like a cozy Halloween-y style book. The perfect thing to read in October if you're not looking for gore or horror or violence. This is exactly the kind of thing to read in that month. I think a big reason as to why I enjoyed The Amusements by Angela Flannery is because it is set in Tramore in County Waterford. That is really close to where I grew up as a child. When I was younger, we would go down to Tramore every single summer because it was a beachside town. There was really great fish and chips. There was great ice creams. There was an amusement park. There was a water centre. You could do basically anything while you were there for the day. And I think that that is a big reason why I enjoyed it so much. This book has a 3.51 rating on Goodreads, and I also gave it a 3.5 star rating. And it is set, as I said, in the small town of Tramore, and it's following a couple of characters in some loosely related short stories that travel about 20 or so years in time. I enjoyed this, and I think, as I said, a big thing for me was the setting, but also because the characters were a little bit chaotic, but still really enjoyable to follow on and to discover what their stories were. I might be going a little bit against the grain here, but I really enjoyed The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. This is one that I gave a 4-star rating to, but it only has a 3.52 rating on Goodreads. This is following Lauren, who comes home from work one day to see her husband Michael sitting at the kitchen and talking to her about what they're going to have for dinner, which is concerning because Lauren lives alone and she's not married. Her husband goes up to the attic to fix one of the light switches, and there is a powerful flash of light and another different man comes back down the stairs. Lauren figures out that the attic is kind of like a magical portal, and every time her husband goes up to the attic, he comes back down as a different person. And this life that she had is completely wiped out. I love a sliding doors, fork in the road narrative of what would have happened if this is how my life had gone. What would have happened if this is the decision I had made? And this felt a little bit like that. So when we see all of the different lives that Lauren is living and the different partners that she has, the different paths that she has gone down, the different situations, both financially, physically, emotionally, that she finds herself in, I thought it was such gripping storytelling. A perfect read for the summer, especially if you have pictures of yourself by the beach, is Hits Different by Lizzie Huxley-Jones and Tasha Ghouri. I have already read a book by Lizzie Huxley-Jones, so I know that I love their writing style, but I also love that they teamed up with somebody who was on Love Island a couple of years ago to write a book about something that definitely needs more representation, and that is characters with disabilities. This book has a 3.51 rating on Goodreads, and it is following Cassie, who has dreams of becoming a dancer, but fears that her cochlear implant is going to hold her back because she can't hear the music quite as well. However, her fears should be qualmed, because she has been brought on board as a backing dancer for one of the world's biggest superstars when she goes on her next tour. This means that Cassie is going to be leaving her life in London behind and jetting off for Mallorca for the summer, where she's going to team up with all of the other dancers and try to make a big name for themselves. It does feel a little bit Taylor Swift Eras Tour-esque, so if that's the kind of situation that you love, definitely go and check this one out. But I also loved watching Cassie come out of her shell and discover who she is a lot more. Cassie is in a relationship at the beginning of this book that she really shouldn't be in. She's with somebody who doesn't particularly have time for her or care about her, but I really loved watching her become more independent, become more self-secure, and just be the person that she always should have been. One that I really enjoyed was The Snag List by Sophie White. This has a 3.52 average rating on Goodreads, and it is following 3 different women who are all brought together by circumstance. All of these 3 women and their families have bought a home in Monterey Valley. This housing estate is full of influential people, it is affluent, it is up and coming, and it is exactly where their lives are bringing them. Except that not all 3 of these women are happy in their situations. Lindy's young son Max has always been the star of Maxed Out, a YouTube channel where he does reviews on toys, he will play with things, he will talk about the toys he's been sent. But Lindy is starting to get a little bit worried that it's overtaking his life and that it's ruining her relationship with her husband, Adam. So she wants to start bringing Max a bit more behind the camera, change the situation of the channel, and Adam is definitely not on board with that. Ro has always had dreams of becoming a theatre actress, and her husband's insistence that it is now time for them to settle down and have a child is really putting a spanner in the works, especially because Ro was never really certain that motherhood was in her future. As for Alva, she had met up with a man about a year or so ago, and they had started a relationship together, which has presented them with a now 2.5-month-old child. She just isn't quite sure that Tom is Tilly's father, because she hooked up with one of her best friends around the same time that she and Tom had gotten together, and there's always that question of who Tilly's father really is. Another book from Sophie White that has a relatively low average rating is Filter This. This one has an average rating of 3.54, and it is following Ali, who only ever wants to be an influencer. Her biggest goal in life is to reach 100,000 Instagram followers. She has always looked up to Shelley, who is one of the biggest mummy bloggers and mummy vloggers in Ireland, and Ali thinks that this is the way to get more notoriety. So when she posts a picture that at certain angles looks like it could be a baby bump, she grabs it by the balls and runs with it. Ali decides that she's going to make a pregnancy diary, she's going to keep people informed on how her pregnancy is going, except Ali isn't actually pregnant. I thought that this book was completely insane, but it also gives a really great view of what life is actually like behind the scenes from some of the influencers whose lives we have been poring over every single day. Because while Shelley looks like she has got the perfect family life, everything is going rosy for her, behind closed doors, she and her husband Dan are at loggerheads with each other continuously. He hasn't really been helping out around the house, the kids find him an absolute stranger, and their marriage is barely hanging on by a thread. If you love New Girl and you love Nick and Jess's relationship in there, then check out The Roommate by Rosie Dannon. This has got an average rating of 3.54 and it's following Clara and Josh. Clara has travelled right across the country to spend the summer in LA because she has heard that a guy she's had a crush on has got a room open and that she will finally be able to work on her crush on him. It's just that he's actually put his room on Craigslist because he's going away for the summer. He and his band are going to be touring across the country. So instead, Josh is moving into the room. Clara was brought up in a very well-to-do, waspy kind of family. So she's not really ready for the rough and ready world that Josh is bringing to her. And she's also never spent any time in the company of somebody who works in the adult entertainment industry until she meets Josh. This was, for a while, one of the spiciest books that I had ever read, and I absolutely loved it when it first came out. I instantly ran out and bought a physical copy of it because the first time I read it, I'd had it as a Neck Alley book, and I've also got a copy of The Intimacy Experiment, which is the follow-up to this, that I think also suffered a little bit from second book syndrome because it just didn't live up to the heights of The Roommate for me. Also with a 3.54 rating on Goodreads is The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. This is following Catalina, who is, incredibly ironically, a wedding planner who was left at the altar. It's 3 years since that fateful day, and Lena has really moved on in life. She is now working towards a promotion in tandem with one of the biggest wedding venues in the country. She's going to be doing up an entire marketing campaign for them as a stepping stone to getting their events planner job. It's just that she is now working for this job in competition with Max. Max is the brother of her former fiancé, and he may have had a helping hand in Drew deciding that he didn't want to go through with the wedding. Obviously, Max and Lena are completely against one another, not just for professional reasons, but it turns out that their personal lives may be softening a little bit more. Yes, of course, you have all the fun of the fair when it comes to the romance in this book, but something else that I really enjoyed is the voice given to immigrant stories. Lena is from a Brazilian background. I think her parents or grandparents came to the US from Brazil, and I love that it is so important in Lena's story. That we see her bringing Max to a Brazilian restaurant, that we see her hanging out with her family and speaking Portuguese to them. As an immigrant myself, it is hugely important for me to see that story and that situation lived out in the pages of a book, because I can connect to it, because I can connect to being in a different culture and society and language than the one that comes naturally to you. So seeing that in a book will always give it an extra boost for me. One that I think may have a low rating because it just is a little bit under the radar is The Summer Job by Lizzie Dent. I absolutely love how chaotic this book is. It has a 3.54 rating on Goodreads, and it is following Birdie. She has been hired as the sommelier for a hotel in Scotland, and she's pretty sure that that's fine because it's pretty run down, it's very drab, not a lot of people are going there. But when she gets there, things hit her hard, because this hotel has had a massive makeover. It is now a 5-star luxury establishment, and Birdie is really gonna have to pull her socks up because she is not a sommelier. Her best friend Heather actually is. And Birdie has taken Heather's job over because Heather is following her heart for the whole summer. Heather has fallen in love with a man from Italy, and she is spending her Italian dream summer following her newfound love across the country, eating her body weight in cheese and pasta. And Birdie barely knows the difference between a red and a white wine. So this summer is going to be very interesting. Idle by Louise O'Neill has a 3.57 rating on Goodreads, and it is following Samantha. She has just reached 3 million Instagram followers, and she has celebrated this by bringing out a story of the time that she lost her virginity when she was younger. She had hooked up with one of her best friends from school, and she is telling the entire story about this. But there is a huge problem, because Lisa, this best friend from school, has gotten in touch with Samantha's agent and said that everything that has been told in this story wasn't how Lisa saw it. It wasn't consensual, it wasn't full of love, and Lisa actually doesn't enjoy looking back on that time at all. This brings all of Samantha's integrity into question. People are starting to wonder if they have been looking up to the wrong person and what other cobwebs are hiding inside in her wardrobe. Her follower number starts to plummet. So Samantha is desperate to do anything to bring her reputation back into the shining beacon that it once was. I thought that this was such an interesting look on how much we idolize the people on our phone screens and the pedestals that we can put upon them, and how quick we are to turn on them when even a hint of something has gone wrong. Here is The Beehive by Sarah Crossan. It was Sarah's first foray into writing for adults, and it was such a gripping storyline that I genuinely had to follow. It has a 3.59 rating on Goodreads, and it is following Anna, who works as a kind of an estate lawyer. She gets a phone call from a client one day called Rebecca, who is calling to inform the company of her husband Connor's death. Connor was killed in a car accident, and this is terrible news for Anna, because she had been having an affair with Connor for 3 years. Their lives had been secretive meetings in hotels and furtive glances over bars, and now her whole world is falling apart, and there is nobody that she can really talk to about this. But Anna strikes up the most unlikely friendship with Connor's widow, Rebecca, and as their friendship starts to develop, Anna knows that she can't keep this secret any longer. Those are some of the books with a kind of a low average rating that I, going against the grain, have actually really enjoyed. What is a book that has a relatively low average rating that you would really recommend? If you'd love to leave me a comment, if you can't think of anything you'd like to say, then just leave me one of the heart emojis, because these books deserve a lot more love. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.